You know, if you live in one of the world's biggest democracies, you're actually living under two governments at the same time. So how is that power shared? Well, the answer is a system called federalism. And today, we're going to break down exactly how it works.
Just think about it for a second. As a citizen, you follow the laws of your national government and your state or provincial government. You probably pay taxes to both. They both have real authority over your life. It sounds a bit complicated, right? So how does this whole thing actually work without just descending into total chaos?
Well, that's exactly the problem that federalism is designed to solve. So let's start at the beginning with the core idea.
So at its heart, federalism just means you have at least two levels or tiers of government. You've got a national government for the big picture stuff, and then you have state or provincial governments for more local, day-to-day matters. And here's the really important part. Neither one is the boss of the other. They both have their own independent powers, guaranteed.
Now, this is totally different from what's called a unitary government. In that system, the central government is supreme and can pretty much just tell regional governments what to do. In a federal system, no way. The state has its own powers locked in by the Constitution. Think of it this way. It's a partnership, not a hierarchy. We actually saw this play out when Belgium officially switched from being a unitary country to a federal one back in 1993, just to better manage all the diversity within its borders.
And look, this isn't just some dusty old political theory we're talking about. Federalism is a major system all around the world. All the countries you see here in red are federations, and you'll notice they include some of the planet's largest and most powerful nations.
In fact, get this. Even though only about 25 countries in the whole world have federal systems, their citizens make up a whopping 40% of the entire world's population. So yeah, if you want to understand how a huge chunk of the world is run, you've got to understand federalism.
But, you know, not all federations are created equal. How they actually come into being, well, that blueprint for unity makes a huge difference in how power is balanced between the center and the states.
There are basically two ways this happens. The first is called coming together federations. This is where independent states decide to join forces to create a bigger, stronger country, like the USA or Australia did. They give up a little bit of their independence to get a lot more security. And in these systems, the states tend to be really powerful. The second way is called holding together. This is when a large, super diverse country decides to divide its power up internally to make sure all the different groups feel represented. India and Spain are great examples. Here, the central government usually holds on to a bit more power, and that often creates this fascinating, constant push and pull for more control between the center and the states. And that, right there, brings us to our main event, India. It's a textbook example of a holding together federation. The entire system was designed from the ground up to manage incredible diversity and handle that exact tension between a strong central government and powerful states. Okay, so here's a really interesting little fact. If you read the Indian Constitution, you'll never find the word federation. Instead, it calls India a union of states. But don't let that fool you. The entire structure, the whole spirit of the government, is absolutely built on the principles of federalism.
The way the Constitution handles this is actually pretty clever. It lays out this threefold division of power. First, you have the Union List. This covers things of national importance, like defense and banking, and only the central government can make laws about them. Simple enough. Second, you've got the State List. This is for stuff like local police and agriculture, where only the state governments have a say. And then there's the interesting one, the Concurrent List. This is a shared space for things like education and marriage, where both the central government and the states can pass laws. It's the blueprint for how they share power.
All right, so that's the theory, the blueprint on paper. But how is this whole unity through diversity idea actually held up in the real world? Let's take a look at the tests that have really put Indian federalism through its paces. The first big test, and maybe the biggest one of all, was creating states based on language. After 1947, the map was redrawn to try and make sure that people who spoke the same language lived in the same state. Now, at the time, a lot of leaders were genuinely worried this would tear the country apart. But you know what? The exact opposite happened. It actually made the country feel more united, and it made the job of administration way easier. Okay, so test number 2 was just as tricky, if not more so. What do you do about language in a country with hundreds of them? Crafting a national policy that didn't make anyone feel left out? Well, that took an incredible amount of care and a really flexible approach. And the solution they came up with was, frankly, brilliant in how flexible it was. First, India has no single national language. Hindi was made an official language, but it's only the mother tongue for about 40% of people.
So to protect everyone else, 21 other major languages are officially recognized as scheduled languages. Plus, English continues to be used for official business. Here's the key: promotion, not imposition. This smart, flexible approach helped India avoid the kind of terrible conflicts over language that we saw in places like Sri Lanka.
But the story of Indian federalism doesn't end there. It kept evolving. The next big idea was to bring government even closer to the people through something called decentralization.
So what is decentralization? The idea is super simple, really. It's the belief that a lot of problems are best solved, well, locally. Who knows better about a village's water problem than the people living in that village, right? They know where the money should be spent and how to manage things best.
And I absolutely love this analogy. Think of it like a train coach with 3 levels. You have the central government at the top, the state governments in the middle, and decentralization added that third tier at the bottom, local government, like the panchayats in villages and municipalities in cities.
Now, this wasn't just some nice idea they talked about. In 1992, they made it a constitutional reality. This massive change made it mandatory to hold regular elections for local government. It reserved seats to make sure marginalized communities and women were represented. In fact, at least 1/3 of all positions are for women. It also created independent bodies to run these elections and, crucially, required states to share some of their power and money with these local bodies. It was a huge step in making democracy stronger from the ground up.
So what's the big takeaway here? Federalism isn't some set-it-and-forget-it system. It's alive. It's constantly changing, especially in a country as dynamic as India. And that leads us to the final, crucial question about where power goes from here.
As societies evolve, this is the big ongoing conversation at the very heart of federalism. Where should power really sit? At the center, with the states, or even more locally? There's no single easy answer. It's a dynamic balancing act, a constant negotiation, and it's the question that every federal nation across